students generally come from wealthy families, and school pickups looks like luxury car shows.
It's mixed.
It's mixed.
It's mixed. We see some really nice cars sometimes. There are a lot of schools on the island that call themselves American schools or call themselves international schools. A lot of them, I'm sorry to say, are just big money-making machines.
If you had to choose one thing from American school that you'd recommend a traditional Taiwanese school try out for a semester, what would it be?
All right, I'm gonna get in trouble now. A kid doesn't only exist in a classroom. We're not just shaping scholars, we're shaping people.
Hello， 大家好，我是志祺，欢迎回到常驻我朋友。你知道吗？有一群学生虽然从小在台湾长大，却过着跟多数台湾人截然不同的校园生活。不仅上课用英文而且从教材学制，甚至连校园文化都是比照美国本土的学校。很多人听说过这些美国学校，但实际上呢，对这类学校的了解可能只停留在学费很贵、学生很有钱、课程很轻松。但这些说法到底是事实还是迷思今天我们邀请到了新竹县康乃薾美国学校的校长 Jeff 一起来揭晓。Jeff 过去呢曾经在美国高中当老师，也曾经在哥伦比亚、卡达、丹麦、菲律宾、新加坡的国际学校任职，拥有超过30年的教学还有行政经验。而其实他这30多年的教育生涯当中呢，有将近一半的时间都待在台湾。从2012年起，他就在台湾的国际学校任教，现在呢则是新竹康乃薾美国学校的校长。那今天我们就要来问问 Jeff美国学校到底是一个什么样子的存在？谁可以去读？课业压力真的有比较小吗？还有作为一名经验丰富的国际教育专家，他又是怎么样看待台湾的教育呢？你觉得店家规划无孩区算是验头吗？无孩区简单来说呢，就是商家或公共场所为了防止孩童吵闹或捣乱，所以禁止儿童进入。最近几年呢，全球的无孩区有越来越多的现象，像是在韩国就有数百家的餐厅谢绝儿童入内，台湾也有部分的商家跟进。除此之外呢，国外也有航空推出无孩机舱，或是在火车上面设置宁静车厢，跟亲子车厢做出一个区隔。那虽然支持者认为分流能够预防小孩影响他人，但有不少人批评这是歧视孩童。不过话又说回来不论呢是否支持无孩区，大家应该都有共识，就是希望孩子能够慢慢的学会遵守社会规范。那如果你想用轻松不收账的方式教会孩子理解公共礼仪，那就来看看芒狗狗新推出搭火车的约定绘本组合。这套组合里面呢，2本绘本的书名相同，角色视角却不同。独特的双视角设计能够让孩子在同一趟的旅程当中，透过切换立场体验换位思考，以有趣同理的方式理解社会的规则。除了故事好玩图面的细节也是满分，有好多彩蛋等着孩子寻宝，增加阅读的乐趣。输入77首播即可享有限时优惠，随书呢还附赠超 Q 的芒狗狗娃娃，还有万用小包。现在就点击链接了解更多的资讯吧。Hi Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today, and please say hi to our audience.
Hi, everybody.
Also, off camera, we got our producer 关节 joining the conversation too.
Hi.
Okay, to kick things off, I've gathered some common impressions about American school online. Please hold up your signs with 3 seconds after hearing each one. First, speaking Mandarin is prohibited on campus. Students may get fined, given extra homework, or run laps for speaking Mandarin.
No, definitely not true in most good schools. Research shows that actually letting students use their native language helps their learning of English and other topics.
Oh, 2. Even the school cafeteria is very American style, with American pizza served regularly.
Absolutely not true. Our cooks would struggle to cook American style all the time. We focus on healthy food with a mix of different nationalities and stuff, but no. We've never had pizza served by our cafeteria.
3. All students and most of the faculties are American citizens.
Definitely not true. We have a diversity of students from all around the world and a diversity of staff.
4. Students get days off for both US and Taiwanese public holidays.
Generally, yes, that's true.
Oh, so they have 2 holidays?
Depending on the holidays, yes.
Oh, that sounds great. 5. Students generally come from wealthy families, and school pickups looks like luxury car shows.
It's mixed.
It's mixed.
It's mixed. We see some really nice cars sometimes. One of my families has a beautiful Aston Martin, but we also have a lot of very, very middle-class families.
Okay, and because Connor is from Taipei and the wealthy area in Taiwan.
It is, but you see just as many Toyotas and Nissans as you do, Porsches or other luxury cars.
Okay, I think many Taiwanese don't understand American schools and find them mysterious. So first, Jeff, can you give us a quick intro? What exactly are these American schools in Taiwan?
Okay, well, first of all, you have to understand that that's a very complicated question because there are a lot of schools on the island that call themselves American schools or call themselves international schools. A lot of them, I'm sorry to say, are kind of small, just big money-making machines. They're not really proper schools in that way, or at least not fully American schools in that way. For schools like my own, We are authorized by the relevant embassy. So, for example, for us, it's the AIT. For Taipei European School, it's the French and British and German embassies or interest offices. Another thing that makes schools like ours very different, like the real international schools, is we're accredited by an organization, an outside organization, that regularly comes and checks us for our quality. In the US, there are several of these organizations. One of the most famous ones in this part of the world is called WASC, the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. And what they do is for schools that, are really legit schools, they will send inspectors like every 3 years, and you have to report to them every 3 years. They're not the police. They're not there to shut us down. But if we report that we're doing something and we're doing something well, or we're improving in something in our reports to them, they'll send a team to come and look and make sure that we're actually doing it.
Okay.
And so it's like an outside quality control that's really, I think, important for schools of this level. Because again, remember I said, there are lots of these little schools around that call themselves American schools. They don't have that. It's a real sign of quality for schools that do, because it tells universities, not just in the US, but internationally, that this school meets the standard of really good education. So we can trust when students from that school apply to our universities.
Yeah.
We can trust that what we're getting on paper is true. It's accurate. And that really helps our kids, but it helps our whole program. And that's, again, something that distinguishes particularly the real international schools versus some of the just kind of little money-making cash cows.
So what are the admission requirements? Can any Taiwanese student apply?
For our type of schools, which we're licensed, this was called a School for International Residents. So for our kind of schools, the government requires a non-Taiwanese passport for all of our students.
Got it.
It's not our requirement, it's legal. It's a legal requirement. For other schools that are experimental academies or bilingual schools, or smaller ones that aren't really licensed as SIRs, they're more open in their admissions.
I heard some people try to get foreign passport for their children just to attend American school. Does that really happen?
Yes, it does happen in some cases. Obviously, we want to make sure that all the passports we see are legal passports, and we definitely don't encourage anybody to do anything dodgy to get passports. But there are a lot of parents out there who aren't really happy with, the nature of education options that they have in the local system, and see this as an opportunity for their kids to get a chance at something international.
What kind of families do your students come from? Are most from American expatriate families, or are there many Taiwanese families with dual citizenship?
For most schools like ours, a large portion of the students are actually Taiwanese by birth, or ethnic. Their families are Taiwanese, but they have dual citizenship. It might be US, it might be Canadian, Australian, a whole other range of dual citizenships. For our school at HCAS, we have a substantial portion of Koreans and Japanese. We have some
Japanese.
Indian expats, Israeli expats, New Zealanders. It's a mix.
This next question might be a bit blunt, but many online articles say that American schools are elite institutions only the wealthy can afford. So what do you think of that perception?
I understand where the perception comes from, but it's not entirely accurate. Schools like ours were originally established for expatriate families, like you said, people who are outside their own country and want a consistent level of education. For local families, many of them may be wealthy, like you're describing. But as I mentioned before, when you brought up about cars, a lot of our students, the tuition is actually paid by the company that employs them. And so oftentimes foreigners are brought in for different industries by those companies, like a Korean company or Japanese company or something like that. And in that context, the company will pay the tuition and everything like that. Family's very middle class, very, ordinary family like everybody else.
So what's the typical tuition range for American schools?
It can run anywhere between maybe 200 to 500,000 a year for most of the smaller schools.
Is for NTD or USD?
NT. Oh yeah, no, definitely NT. Some of the bigger schools will go up as high as 800,000 or $1 million. There are a few small schools that try to have those numbers as well. I don't really understand why, but there are some that do it.
Okay.
It's actually cheaper than I thought.
Now that we've cleared up some myths, I'd like to discuss actual campus life in more detail. A lot of people in Taiwan get their impressions of American school from TV shows, like students and super free and don't always have to stay in the classroom. So what's the typical school days actually like for your students?
Okay, well, first of all, no, our kids do not roam freely about the halls all day. I think one of the reasons for that misperception is with our older kids especially. They don't have homerooms anymore.
Oh.
So for example, in Taiwan schools, the teachers will come to the rooms to teach the kids. In most American international schools, the teachers have subject specialized rooms, and the students will move from class to class depending. So that's why you might see kids in the hall as they're moving to different classes. But I mean, physically, structurally, it's not really that different in terms of timing, although we do end earlier.
My impression of American education is that it emphasizes students and teachers being on equal footing. Is that true?
No, it's not. I mean, okay, we're equal as far as human beings and human rights and stuff like that. But no, of course, I mean, that would be chaos. I mean, we do encourage a lot of, active participation by students. If a teacher is wrong, we do encourage students to challenge a little bit with questions and stuff. But no, I mean, teachers are authorities in their rooms as well.
So how different is your school curriculum from a typical Taiwanese school? Like what kind of courses do your students take?
In terms of subject matter, many of the classes are probably not that different. I mean, we have math classes, we have science classes, things like that. The biggest difference with international education versus Taiwanese education is the amount of thinking that happens. In this part of the world, as I'm sure you know from your own educations, a lot of it really revolves around memorizing. We don't do that, not nearly to the same extent. Ours is much more about thinking, about analyzing, about being able to argue based on evidence and things like that.
Can you give us some examples on that?
Okay, sure. Before I became a school administrator, I spent decades as a history teacher. And usually when I say that, people are, oh God, history. Because
so
when they
boring,
had history,
blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. And to memorize all the names and dates. That's really not the way I would teach it.
That's the way I was taught.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the way many
So
people
boring.
around the world have been. But for example, if I'm talking about like World War I, right? I don't need the kids to memorize the exact dates in which World War I started or exactly what battles were fought where, at what dates. What I need them to understand is why did it happen? Why was it fought the way it was? And what were the consequences of that? Because these are questions that can be argued. I mean, there are lots of historical facts, like this happened on this day. But when you start to get into the why something happened, think of it like this, okay? If you have 5 people who witness a car accident, okay, it's Taiwan, right? Car hits a scooter, okay? Let's just go with that. Car hits a scooter, right? If you have 5 people and the police actually interviewed all 5 people, they would all tell that story differently.
Yeah.
They would all place the blame differently.
Yeah.
Because their own perceptions, their own attitudes about these things will shape how they respond. Well, it's the same with history. It's the same with a lot of different subjects. It's that analytical thinking. It's that, really trying to evaluate and get to the heart of why something happens, and then take those lessons and use them for new concepts or new ideas or new approaches moving forward in your own life. That's really what we focus on.
So how about the exams? In Taiwan, starting from junior high, students have 3 major exams each semester, plus quizzes almost every week. Is the same in American schools?
No.
We
do have exams, but we do it far less. Sometimes we won't have exams at the semester for a course, maybe it'll be a project that students have to create and develop. It can really vary. We do have some standardized testing to be able to measure progress year after year. And our students at the higher levels do train for exams that relate to what's called the advanced placement, which is a program where kids can take a class in high school. And if they do well enough at it, they can actually get university credit for it.
Yeah.
And they have to take those tests. But we're not as exam driven. And that's one of the reasons actually that many Taiwanese families and other families from this part of the world look at wanting to have their kids in an international school.
Yeah.
Because it's not so exam driven. There are other stressors, but exams are not as much of a stress.
So if a student originally attended a regular Taiwanese school and just transferred to your school, what would they typically have the most difficulty adapting to?
Most people think it's language because that's just the automatic one that they look at. In my experience, yes, language is challenging, but we have mechanisms to support that. The harder one that I've seen for a lot of students is changing that way of thinking. A lot of students join schools like ours in like grade 7 or grade 8 or grade 9. The parents keep them in local schools because they want them to learn Chinese. We also have Chinese, but it's also frankly cheaper, right? And then suddenly they'll bring them to an American school in grade 7, 8, or 9 and say, okay, get my kid into Stanford, right?
That sounds like real stories.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. But when the kids come in, they actually will have less trouble in many cases mastering the language than they will mastering the thinking that's involved. the analytical thinking that I was describing about, but also the independent responsibility. In international education, students really have to take much more personal, independent responsibility for their learning. The teacher's not going to chase them every day to make sure, did you get this done? Did you do this? Did you do this? We're trying to train them that they have to take responsibility for that themselves. It's a big shift, as I'm sure you're probably aware, when Taiwanese kids go to university, because they're used to somebody chasing them all the time and, did you? And then they get to university and professor's not doing that. Professor's like, well, you didn't do it, too bad, right? We are already training that when the kids are in school so that they are more independently responsible for themselves.
Okay. So we often hear that American schools offer more extra curricular activities like school dances, and students seems to have more fun. Is that true for your school?
First of all, I want to separate out. Dances are not extracurricular activities as we think of it. We do have some dances sometimes, but that's usually organized by the student government, our student council. But we have a lot of extracurricular activities because we really do, especially at our school, because we're the only Dalton Plan-inspired school on the island. And that really focuses on the whole child, not just academics. So we really, we do have a lot of extracurricular offerings for our kids.
Okay, you mentioned Dalton. Could you tell us more?
Sure. So there are 3 core elements of Dalton. For the first one, it's something everybody's seen if they've ever seen Harry Potter. The house system, right? Dividing your kids into houses. We have 4 houses, and all of our kids are sorted into those houses, not by a talking hat, but they are sorted. They have house competitions, they have house identity. A lot of schools do this. That's not unique to Dalton. They do compete for a house cup at the end of the year. So that helps build community. That's a lot of fun. We also have something called Lab. This is where everyday students can pursue things that they have a particular interest in. And then the third part of Dalton is called assignment. Our older kids, they have what's called a mastery project that they aim towards. It comes from all of those years of doing the lab and really being able to demonstrate what they learn in some big project that they will then show off to the community. So yeah, kids do have fun, but more importantly, a kid doesn't only exist in a classroom, right? We're not just shaping scholars, we're shaping people. They need to know how to interact with other people, how to collaborate with other people, how to lead other people, how to, work on projects together, come up with ideas together, make things happen successfully together.
I think when people say more fun, they're comparing it to Taiwan, like a more intense academic schedule. I'm not a Taiwanese student myself, but from what I know, most Taiwanese high school students are in class from 8 to 5 every day. Yeah, maybe more. But in comparison, they feel like American school students have less academic pressure. So what do you view this statement?
In some ways, I think it's accurate. In other ways, not so much. Big pressure for our kids, and this is a big challenge for kids when they first transfer in. We expect them to speak. We expect them to participate. We expect them to think about what we're saying and contribute to the overall class discussion.
For Taiwanese people speaking English, it's really, really hard pressure.
Exactly. And I mean, at the end of the day, our kids face very similar pressures as well. They want to go to good schools the same way Taiwanese kids do. Just how they get there is a little bit different. So the pressures are a little bit different. Having said that, overall, yes, I would agree that the pressure is not quite as bad. You know that Taiwan, unfortunately, has one of the highest teen suicide rates, for kids when they're really stressed from school and everything like that. It's not to that level with schools like ours because we're really trying to foster what that child's actually interested in. There are pressures, but they're more manageable. The other thing is, I know the government here is talking about introducing SEL, social and emotional learning, into the Taiwan education system. We have a full SEL program from K all the way up to 12. And so we're teaching kids how to manage their emotions, how to handle stress, how to be resilient and things like that, because that's just as important a part of education as knowing, who started what war at what time, probably more so.
If you had to choose one thing from American school that you'd recommend a traditional Taiwanese school try out for a semester, what would it be?
All right, I'm going to get in trouble now. There's a great deal said in Taiwanese system about respect for teachers, right? And it's one of the things I admire about Taiwanese schools. But when you look at the Taiwanese school system, teachers are the most important resource in any school. It's not books, it's not buildings, it's the people that you have to teach your kids. And honestly, if the teachers don't have a reasonable level of compensation, if they don't have support structures and training, for example, the government's got this great idea with the basic education reform law to try and make it a little bit more like international school. And that's great. But you got to be able to train the teachers and give them the support to do it. And so if I had one thing that I would recommend to the Taiwanese system, it's invest that time and invest that money in your teachers. Because when you've got really high quality teachers that understand what you want to do, you will see the results with your kids. But if the teachers are just trying to get through and survive and they're overloaded and struggling.
Teacher is a basic.
Yeah, then the result is your kids don't get the best of that teacher.
On the flip side, is there anything in Taiwan's education system that you really admire and think American school could learn from?
It's the same concept, actually. It's about respect for teachers. I really respect that there is that cultural respect for the educator, for the teacher in Taiwanese schooling. I think that that's a really good thing. And if it's matched with action, I think it would just have some really great results for Taiwanese education. I wish that for international education, for our parents and our kids, sometimes they had a little bit more of that. In our school, it's pretty good. We have a really great community, and our parents are very supportive. But in a lot of schools, like in the US, for example, you probably see on YouTube clips of, school board meetings or things where parents are coming in and they're attacking the teachers and everything like that.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of people dropping out of education in the West because teachers are like, that's not worth it.
Okay, I grew up in Taiwan's education system, and honestly, it was all about tests and rankings. Cram schools were everywhere. But in the US, I've heard things are very different. So, as an American school based in Taiwan, how do you navigate this cultural difference? Do your students still go to cram school for better grades?
Generally, no.
Ooh.
If kids from our schools are going to cram school, we're not doing our jobs properly.
I think there's a very different point of view to cram school.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the nature of cram is just that. It's cramming something in, right? Cramming in more memorizing, cramming in more information. But again, since we don't teach that way, cram schools don't make any sense. We do have some kids, if they're starting out a little bit lower or something like that, they might have private tutoring. But generally, our kids would not go to cram schools. Navigating that cultural difference, the first part of your question, that's the challenge for international American schools in Taiwan. For example, we really want kids to be able to pursue their own path, right? We want to help them be successful in whatever that path may be.
Yeah.
Right? We have some parents who also agree with that philosophy. But we do also have parents, particularly Taiwanese parents, are like, I want my kid in an Ivy League school, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to carefully work with the kids and their parents to find the best way forward. We kind of have to be all things to all people, which is challenging, but you have to be. A private school can't survive without being able to address both of those desires among their parents, or else you're going to lose a big chunk of your parents.
Yeah.
And you shut down.
From what I understand, most American school students end up going to university in the US, right?
Yeah, more than half.
So some people view American schools as little Americas in Taiwan, and almost like isolate communities, preparing students to leave. How do you feel about this idea?
I think in some places around the world, American schools are like that.
Okay.
I don't think that's universally the case in Taiwan, unless it's a really, really big school that's really self-contained. But even in their case, I don't think that's necessarily true. I know our school, for example, we really work hard to build connections with the Taiwanese community, not just for our Taiwanese kids, but for our non-Taiwanese kids, because this is where you live. You should know something about it. You should be aware of the culture. But there is an element of that that's a little bit inescapable, and I know it's a pressure for Taiwanese parents. A lot of Taiwanese parents, they want their kids to have an international style education, but stay in Taiwan, right? And it's hard because the matchup with Taiwanese universities isn't perfect. So it's challenging. A lot of our kids do go to US universities, but some go to the UK, some go to Australia, Singapore, lots of other places. They do generally go abroad. That's true. Because unfortunately, the same things that push them out from Taiwanese high schools or elementary schools are the same things that push them away from Taiwanese universities. Many of them do eventually come back and work in Taiwan after a few years. But yeah, it's a challenge that many of them do target going abroad. Otherwise, they wouldn't spend the money and the time and the energy in a school like ours.
How does the school support them to feel the Taiwanese community is important?
We have a lot of different programs. A lot of schools do it differently. At our school, we actually have a course in Taiwan history that we do mandatory for grade 8s in our school. Just this last month, we pioneered our first Week Without Walls activity, which was that grade level. Went and did a whole number of activities around, the whole thing was an interdisciplinary study of Taiwanese indigenous communities. And they went out and they went and interacted with indigenous communities around the island and stuff like that. So we do things like that. We have an international bazaar that we have in the spring that we open up to the community and we welcome everybody to come in. We try to work with local volunteer organizations and stuff like that so our kids can go and volunteer in their organizations. You know, a lot of these organizations, for example, they want kids to help kids learn English. So we try to build those connections wherever we can.
Do you think your students struggle with identity issues, like growing up in Taiwan but not feel like they fully belong here?
It's not just Taiwanese kids. There's a concept in English we call TCKs, third culture kid. And they're kids that grow up in international education and never really connect with their home culture or anybody else's culture. That there is that international school culture.
Only
you know,
there.
that international nomad type thing. Because maybe their parents' work transfer them from place to place. It does exist, and it's a hard one. It's one of the reasons why we have those Taiwanese elements in our school. We even, unlike a lot of schools, we even run national curriculum Chinese classes all the way up to grade 8 to maintain that connection with their culture. But it is a challenge for adults as well. I mean, adult expats, they lose that connection with their home country too. I haven't even been back in the US since 2008, I think.
Whoa.
We become very international in many respects.
So you teach Mandarin. Do you also teach a class on Taiwanese culture?
Weave that into the history class.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, one of the challenges with teaching Taiwanese history is, you know, the sources, they're either really X or really Y. I won't use the colors, right? So when you're trying to teach it, you end up doing a lot of Taiwanese culture because depending on which sources you're using, you're also teaching a political narrative there. So we do weave a lot of Taiwanese culture into those things as well.
Okay. If there's a Taiwanese parents thinking about sending their child to an American school, what advice would you give them? Is it suitable for everyone?
No, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And I've seen parents who make this choice for the wrong reason. So if I have any advice for parents that are thinking about sending their kids to this type of school, it's reflect really carefully on why. For example, sending your kid into an American school in grade 9 because you want them to learn English, not a smart choice.
Yeah.
Because already the courses are very academic and they're preparing them for university. There's an expectation of having that level of English already. And if you're sending a kid in that with that kind of disadvantage, you're setting them up for a really, really hard time. So parents, really, you need to think very carefully about why you want your child to go to that kind of school. And I encourage you, if you do want your child to go to that kind of school and you meet the legal requirements, start at a young age. Don't wait until they're almost done with education.
Yeah.
Because that adjustment is so much harder. Starting them late because you think, oh, I can just throw them in there for 5 years or 4 years and they'll get into an Ivy League school. You know, if I want to throw them in there to try and get into a top 50 school or an Ivy League school, remember those stressors we were talking about? That's where those stressors come in. Because when you're putting a kid into that situation, that is a lot of pressure on that child. And it's just not healthy. So really reflect why and then when you would want to put them into a school like ours.
Okay. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience and that we haven't touched on?
I guess, you know, it was interesting listening to the myths that you were describing, the perceptions you were describing.
It's all for TV shows.
That's fair. That's fair. But because of that, I guess what I would do is all of these schools, they have, including ours, obviously, this isn't just a shameless plug from my school. All of these schools have information sessions, admission sessions, where they welcome people to come in and take tours of the campus and get to know a little bit about the school. So I would really encourage more people to attend those just to learn a little bit more about what the schools are really like, not just what the
TV show,
the
high school
the TV
musical
shows, or me trying to debunk everything on this podcast could do. You know, that would be something that I would recommend to people.
All right. Huge thanks to Jeff for such an insightful conversation. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thanks very much. Sorry if it was too much.
No. That's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very insightful.
Thank you.
那这集就先到这边。如果大家喜欢今天的影片，不要把它分享出去，或是可以点这个地方看其他相关影片。那么今天这一期就到这边告一段落，我们就明晚再见喽，拜拜。